Hey, what's up, everybody? Of course, this is King Vaughn Jr. of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. Of course, of course, you can follow me on social media, on Twitter slash X at 301 King Vaughn Jr. You can follow me on, of course, you can also follow me on Instagram at Mr. King Vaughn Jr. You can follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One, as well as the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. I'm the social media producer for the unpopular review wrestling show Perfect Plex Talk Radio. Of course, I'm hosted by friend of the program Mike Knox on Mondays at 6 p.m. And of course, you can also like and subscribe, and follow the podcast on YouTube at at Von West Virginia, youtube.com/@ Von West Virginia. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more great content. And so, quite a number of things to talk about, a plethora, if you will. You know what I mean? And so, as far as that's concerned, for one, definitely going to be talking about this upcoming matchup for the NBA Finals, as well as Marvel making a comeback in the video game world. You know what I mean? And it's just my thoughts about that, along with, as we all know, just the main topic is going to be wrestling. When it comes to the biggest, the bombshell of the weekend, of the week, really. You know what I mean? Like when it came to the release of our truth and the details behind that as well. Of course, Mariah May made her debut on NXT last night. Trick Williams still, your reigning NXT champion, of course. Uh, along with a variety of other topics as well, along with my Money in the Bank predictions. It's definitely a lot to get into, and so it's time to hit the ground running. So as I said before, we're going to talk about the things in terms of pop culture, in terms of culture-wise, sports, and everything like that, non-wrestling related stuff first, and then we'll go into the meat of of this much of what this podcast is about as well. It covers a variety of things, but of course I cannot abandon a huge audience, of course, and we're going to talk about wrestling. And so so for one, when it comes to the NBA Finals, of course, congratulations to the Indiana Pacers for making the NBA Finals, and congratulations to the Oklahoma City Thunder for making their second Finals appearance. Both teams, it's their second Finals appearance in franchise history. And so, so as far as that, SGA is the league MVP. But at the same time, the Pacers are not slouches either. They made the comeback and ended up defeating the New York Knicks at home in Indiana on Saturday. So like I said, this is the Pacers return to the finals for the first time in 25 years. Last time they were in the finals was when they lost to the Los Angeles Lakers, which kicked off the Shaq and Kobe dynasty. So it's like the Pacers are looking to they're looking to redeem themselves, if you will. And so, so as far as that, as far as that's concerned, I see OKC winning at the least in 5, just because of their defense, as well as what SGA brings to the table. Just in terms of just a complete player overall in general. But of course, also the Pacers definitely have the experience when it comes to Siakam. He's been the X factor for that team. Dare I say, probably even more so than Halliburton himself. I know that doesn't sound very popular, but it is what it is. But in the end, I see OKC winning their first championship franchise history. So I'm not even including the Seattle Supersonics era. I'm talking about just the Oklahoma City Thunder sort of canon, if you will. Also, also in other news, Marvel, as I said on the outset of this episode, Marvel is making a comeback. Maybe not so much in movies right now, just because of the fact that the Thunderbolts is being pulled, and Doomsday has been delayed. And as a matter of fact, Doomsday is going to come out after GTA 6. Who figure, go figure about that one, right? So now, I just, the trailer just came out today, and so of course, Marvel's making a comeback when it comes to the video games, and they have this new fighting game called Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls or something, and it's a 4-on-4, of course, a tag team, fighting game, whereas we all know Marvel vs. Capcom was 3-on-3. So with this one, it's 4-on-4, and it's exclusively Marvel. No connection, with no collaboration with Capcom. So it looks like this may be RIP to the Marvel vs. Capcom era, right? So last MVC game that they had was Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which is about the focus was all about the Infinity Stones, whatever, that whole thing. Wasn't quite the best. If I had to rank the Marvel vs. Capcom games, I would say 2 is number 1. By far, it's head and shoulders the best one out that franchise. Then I'll go 3. Then I'll go 4th game, and then I will go first one. So if I had to rank them, rank them all in order. That's how I would do it. But yeah, and the thing is, it's got it reminds me of a lot of like Dragon Ball Fighter Z. You know what I mean? And it just in terms of that dynamic, in terms of the game engine, you know what I mean? And it's also also you can tell it's definitely Japanese anime inspired to the point where Iron Man's suit looks like a Gundam armor. You know what I mean? And so I was like, all right, cool. So far, the roster that's been revealed thus far, I know it's going to be much bigger than that. Obviously, Spider-Man, because Spider-Man, you have to, he's the house, the house that, Marvel's pretty much the house that he built, if you will. He's the building block for everything, right? So, like I said, you have Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, Doctor Doom, Storm, Star-Lord, Ghost Rider, and Miss Marvel. So that's who's been revealed thus far. But it's definitely going to be way more to be revealed in the future. And also another gaming news is that the funny thing is, I found this out from what's funny is somebody sent me a text about it, and so I opened it up and found out there's going to be more Mortal Kombat fighting collection, much like the Marvel vs. Capcom fighting collection, the Capcom Classic fighting collection. So this time Mortal Kombat's going to definitely put their hand, going to put their hat in the ring, if you will, and have their own collection. So it's going to be the original Mortal Kombat games, like 1, 2, 3, and like trilogy and stuff. So I'm very much excited for that. So I can't wait for that one. So as far as that, and then so that's about it when it comes to entertainment news. And so now it is time to move on to more pressing matters, if you will. So now, like the biggest bombshell of them all, breaking news, and just this is really pretty much the center of attention when it comes to tonight's episode. And that, I don't know if I needed to, just start off with that. I guess it's a pretty heavy news to, kick things off with. But so, all right, then cool. So as far as this, WWE has been cleaning the house, and the latest name to be future endeavored, or names to be future endeavored, especially R-Truth and Carlito. Carlito was just on TV with the Judgment Day, and all of a sudden he gets future endeavored. And also on this past episode of Raw, carefully, Dirty Dom was even wearing a Carlito shirt underneath his plaid shirt, and under his IC title. But yeah, so those definitely sent shockwaves, especially R-Truth, because of the fact, because of his longevity, because of his years of service, because of like I say, just because of his entertainment value and how important he is, and what he brings to the table. You know what I mean? And so, and for that to happen, it's just like of all people to get released and to get sort of unceremonious exit, if you will. Even though, like little in hindsight, little do we know. See me. Okay. Yeah. So of course, like I said, and little did we know that his farewell would be at the hands of John Cena, right? Um, and as far as his farewell, he got to face his hero, quote unquote, John Cena, even though he's 5 years older than Cena. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like I said, R-Truth, that dude's a national treasure. So he was someone who was a morale booster. You know what I mean? So, and he's a legend in his own right. I believe, he should have a Legends contract himself. As far as a Hall of Fame induction, all those things. And he certainly made history as far as being the first Black NWA champion when he was in TNA. Of course, as far as when he used his real name, Ron Killings over at TNA. So he definitely had a very decorated resume over there. You know what I mean? So like when it comes to that, who knows? He may end up, reappearing in TNA for all we know, for what it's worth, right? But it just was rough. It was painful. I mean, like I said, his release just hit just dropped like a bomb. And the thing, especially when this tweet came out, at first a lot of people thought that it was part of his character, especially on Sunday, June 1st, right? Crazy thing is, I found out about this, grab that I just got out of church, and I was up on my way to the store, right? And all of a sudden, I open up IG, and then this stuff comes out about R-Truth. I'm like, really? You know what I mean? And the thing, and so what I'm saying is that when he came out with that tweet and the timing of it, June 1st, right? You would think that it's part of his character, where he gives like a late prank. You know what I mean? He's 2 months behind April Fool's Day, right? It's June 1st, so he mistakes it for April Fool's Day, right? That's that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So you would think he's trolling, he's being a kayfabe, whatever. Come to find out, that was not the case at all. And the outpour, that he's received, and the thing is, like, under that original tweet where he announced his release, I looked at the comments section. There was a lot of people from the locker room that were hurt. They were heartbroken. They were devastated. From Charlotte, Rhea, Nia Jax, Miz, whoever it is, you name it. Jade, Naomi, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it just, it's just like, that was the whole locker room that just killed the morale. John Cena, all he left was, had a tweet with just a period. Shared a picture of R-Truth, wearing his that Cena shirt, and and not only that, but WWE, of course, they pulled the R-Truth Cena shirt, the Ron Cena shirt. And just imagine how much money that would have made even more. It's just painful to the point where, and like I said, so many people sharing tributes, like I said, Charlotte, Rhea, Miz, Nia, New Day, whoever you could think of, right? Who's who. And I remember the Miz even tweeted a picture of him and R-Truth winning the tag titles last year, WrestleMania 40, in that ladder match, right? And like I said, Miz was sharing videos of him and R-Truth, these funny little skits where like I said, all these different things. It's just just how comedic our truth is, right? And it's just like somebody just stabbing, not just with the knife, but with the sword, just drilling it all the way in, um, if not a dagger, right? And not only that, but Miz unfollowed WWE on social media. And it just and then it led to concern like if they do that to our truth, is the Miz next? Like, are his days numbered? Um, and I do not see him going to you know uh, all EBT wrestling, AEW. I don't see him going over there. You know what I mean? And it's just like Miz. He's just so indebted when it comes to WWE. I just can't see him doing that. You know what I mean? Like, even when people say the same thing about Edge and look what happened to him. But I think Miz is just something a little something different. I think when it comes to him. And the thing is, I don't think he needs to go to a place like that. The thing is, the thing is, I know for the longest time AEW's usually been a place where people from WWE go to, I guess, to rebuild their reputation, or whatever the case is. Um, but I think with the variety that they have, especially when it comes to TNA and Japan, all this other type of stuff, AEW, you don't really, it's not the default second option, end all be all type of thing. Right? So as far as that's what I would say when it comes to, as far as the Miz is concerned. But I think this addresses a more pressing concern, a greater concern, a bigger topic, a bigger issue. And so I think just in terms of the change of the WWE culture, the change of the guard, and this further solidified that WWE is no longer for the fans. It's for the investors. It's for the shareholders. It's for the casual celebrities that that like to think wrestling is hip and cool. It's no longer for the fans. It's no longer for for the everyday person. Not so much for the family anymore. It's like they're to the point where they are pricing out the pricing out the regular everyday fan. I mean, just case in point, look at those WrestleMania ticket prices. WrestleMania and so many other events, right? And so it just goes to show that it's just they're taking, if not taking out, sort of like the heart and the soul and the feeling out of the WWE experience, out of taking away what once made it great, and that is the ability to connect with the fans, and I'm sure people could say something about as far as Vince, and when it comes to those latter years. But as I've said before, when it came, like when I talked about WrestleMania before, the thing is, say what you want to, Vince would not have, burn the fans' pockets. And so, like I said, it just goes to show it's just like, catering, WWE is catering more so to that UFC crowd, like in terms of an entity that has different cultural DNA in WWE, right? And it's definitely leaning, it's leaning more so to the further right, if you will. You know what I mean? And it's like this, especially when it comes to, let's just call it what it is. WWE with this merger with TKO and UFC, all this type of stuff, it's gearing more so towards, and of course UFC has as well, sort of an incel type of crowd, and like I say, you could definitely tell, by like I said, by the product itself, just by the environment, by the atmosphere, and just what I mean, it's in terms of terms of just how brash WWE has been, even more, than ever before, and just in terms of, just that brashness, that arrogance, that we're just feeling ourselves way too much, and it's very evident with the release of R-Truth, a guy who was a morale builder, a morale booster, you know what I mean? Someone who kept not only the fans, but his own locker room entertained. And I'm going to say this. If Vincent Kennedy were still in charge, VKM, Vincent K. McMahon, if Vince were still in charge, he would have fought tooth and nail to keep R-Truth in this company. Vince loved R-Truth. And I know people are going to say, well, Vince only wanted to keep R-Truth there just so he could laugh at him. No, I don't think so. You know what I mean? Like if R-Truth made Vince laugh, he made everybody else laugh. But now with WWE under a different leadership, with this culture of toxicity that they're taking on now, they just, like I said, that's type of stuff that they could care any less about. And they also looked at R-Truth's age, which I feel is kind of a double standard. It's funny how they went, how apparently Truth's age was used as some type of point against him, but yet WWE just signed a guy that's older than Roman Reigns, Jeff Cobb, JC Shazay Mateo, whatever you want to call him over there. You know what I mean? So you shame R-Truth for his age. He looks great for his age. Moves great for his age as well. 53, come on now. But yet you sign, like I said, you sign the guy that's older than the guy, than the face of the company who held the title for over 1,000 days. So what are we talking about here? It just gives off, like I say, just gives off, we don't care. We're going to give the fans the proverbial no finger. And I ain't talking about Stone Cold either, right? It just becomes like this company is starting to become even more heartless. This release is proof of that. And what makes it even worse, the reason why I made that point about Vince is that meanwhile, the thing is, while Vince would have fought to keep Truth there, while everybody else, the thing is, while Vince was letting everybody else go, he always made sure to keep R-Truth around. So even if he was still, running things, and let's say he does have his proverbial spring cleaning, right, post WrestleMania, right. Even with everybody else getting released, I'm sure he would have made room to keep R-Truth, on the payroll as well. As I said before, while Vince would have moved time and space to keep R-Truth there, come to find out Vince's successor, Paul Levesque, as my girl Stephanie says in Wrestling in Color podcast, Paul Levesque, formerly known as Triple H, he was the one who signed off and gave thumbs up for R-Truth to get released. And I know that people like to say, talk about, as far as his age, talking about, how much money he would take up on the roster, like in terms of budget cuts, and how much he would have, sucked up the budget, if you will, whatever. He was still a valuable asset. I was not the biggest fan of R-Truth acting like he had like dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever the case is, and forgetting where he was and all that type of stuff. I wasn't the biggest fan of that side of him. I wasn't a big fan of him dressing like some Confederate soldier or whatever. I wasn't a fan of that either. But it's just like like R-Truth was worth way more than that when it came to entertainment value, when it came to his comedic timing. I did like when he crashed the women's Royal Rumble. I thought that was hilarious. You know what I mean? As far as that, I mean, like I said, R-Truth is a national treasure. While he is not, while he's not in the same scope from a legend standpoint as the Undertaker or Shawn Michaels, to name a few, even though he's not in the same scope as them when it comes to legend status, Truth is very much accomplished in his own right. You know what I mean? He's still, like I said, he's still someone who who's known for for maintaining the morale of the locker room. But clearly, Nick Khan and TKO said, hey, look, F the morale stuff. You know what I mean? It's just, look, it's all about the money. Forget about all that morale, all that happy attitude type of stuff. They really don't care. It's just in WWE is leaning towards the UFC crowd, that that toxic masculinity, incel, misogynistic, type of audience. And so I know people want to blame Dwayne, but at the same time, like the thing is, he's a chairman, but like he's on a different chain of command compared to Triple H, right? So I know there are talks, saying that Dwayne made the call, but ultimately, regardless of where you fall on that, at the end of the day, Paul Levesque, as we call him right now, he's ultimately the one who is the COO of the company. So when it comes to the executive decisions, that Vince will ultimately make, he's the one that's in the chair now. That means, that he has the power to sign off on, when it comes to approve of signings or releases at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, is his pen, that ultimately has that kind of power. And so when I found out that he was the one that gave the thumbs up, for anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna rename it, right in the middle of the episode, right? How about that? But yeah, and the thing is, at the end of the day, he definitely has a huge say so when it comes to that. And so when I found out that he was the one that ultimately did the sign off for this, I figured he would. I figured he would definitely be. I figured that this blood would definitely be on his hands as well. And for him to do that is just very disconcerting. It's already bad enough that that he already has a shady, very shaky reputation, but it makes you look at him in an even dimmer light, if you will. For him to kowtow to these investors and to, when it comes to Nick Khan and everything like that, like he's just caving in, bowing down, kissing the ring and everything, right? And like I say, his booking has been questionable, subpar at best ever since WrestleMania 40. When it comes to lack of consistency, when it comes to the lack of creativity, continuity, all this other type of stuff, right? And so it's already of course, like I said, even though he's released Dolph Ziggler before, but at the same time, and of course, when it comes to his track record, especially when it comes to black wrestlers, especially black male wrestlers, it's not that great. It's unacceptable to the point where Vince himself booked black male wrestlers far better than Paul Levesque does. And so it's just, like I said, it just goes to show that that this environment is becoming just a cesspool of greed, of people who are not vested in in the product or the fans, don't really care about that type of stuff. You know what I mean? And so, and as a matter of fact, Trips himself, already told us how he felt about fans' opinions, on the internet, in that podcast. I think that's Logan Paul podcast something. But yeah, like I said, he already said, of course, he already told fans to shut up or whatever. You know what I mean? So like I said, he's already told you about himself already. He's already shown the fans, his hand, right? So yeah, what I mean. So as far as this, none of this is surprising whatsoever. Just the moves they're making to make it very much UFC-like. Whether it is the frequent trips to Las Vegas, back-to-back WrestleManias, with alternative of it going to Saudi Arabia, absolutely not. You know what I mean? So it's just like he's making the product even far less accessible to the fans, far less accessible than ever before. You know what I mean? And just just piling all these different type of things when it comes to this stupid extra stuff for WrestleMania. You know what I mean? Like all these different type of things. And so this release, is just icing on the cake, if you will. And not in a good way. But like I said, it's just reflective of the change that WWE is in, and just just a different direction. How it's like I said, it's not your typical classic WWE that you've known and grown up watching and everything like that. So so as far as that, it's just more so of the sign of the times, if you will. And the sign of the times I'm not really the biggest fan of. So with that being said, man, so like I said, with that being said, it's just a huge blow. It just in more ways than one. It just straight up put a rotten taste in everybody else's mouth. And also, and another thing, also like how Naomi and Jade have kept their feud even when it came to expressing their hurt that R-Truth got released. And speaking of that, I think Naomi's been leaning into this proceed with caution thing more than ever before, to the point where she told Bianca, for Friday Night SmackDown, which happened to be in Tennessee, Bianca's hometown, of course, University of Tennessee, Orange, everything. Bianca's parents were in attendance. Mom's in a wheelchair. And Naomi tells Bianca that she broke into her parents' home. And you want to talk about stalker, you want to talk about creepish. And Naomi even says, even tells Bianca, I would hate for you to be in a wheelchair like your mom. I said, oh, for you to say that, especially when you know that that Bianca's fingers aren't healed yet. I was like, oh. So yeah, so wait until wait until she's fully recovered. It's over. And so like I said, of course Bianca told Naomi that she ruined her trust. And Naomi definitely did ruin that trust. So as far as that. So Naomi's been a habitual non-stepper ever since she attacked Jade. From that to doing like Edge, and breaking into somebody else's home, or Seth Rollins, and of course the typical, typical breaking into somebody's home storyline, if you will. You know what I mean? So as far as that, like I said, Naomi is on super villain level right now, and Jade Cargill came, attacked her, and cleared the ring, and it got to the point where where Jade and Bianca will ultimately have a stare down. So, you know, Jane ain't finished with that business with Bianca. You know what I mean? So it's definitely there's even more to the story, if you will. I mean, so as far as that's concerned, um, and we also see that that Jacob Fatu crashed out when Solo tried to be of assistance to him, and clearly it's gone from "I love you, Solo" to "I don't need you, Solo." So now we definitely see um, the cracks starting to form between Jacob and Solo. So it's definitely not the same honeymoon as before. So it's very obvious that the bloodline saga has come to an end, and this is just some offshoot thing. I don't know what it is. And it's just like the era of the factions is starting to come to an end because these factions are becoming less and less significant and just deteriorating. You know what I mean? Like their imprint is deteriorating more than ever before. So eventually it's going to be Jacob versus Solo at some point. It's building up even more than ever before. And so you know what? I'm going to SmackDown results from Friday. I'm just sound like I'm just taking stuff up sound out of thin air. So I'm just going to go to. Come on, man. And this is, of course, after Saturday night's main event and everything. So of course, this is from, from this past Friday, May 30th. We had Nia Jax versus Naomi versus Jade Cargill. The winner of that match was Naomi. Then we have R-Truth versus JC Shazay Mateo. The winner, is Mateo. Whatever. We have Los Garza versus Javon Evans and Ray Phoenix. Javon Evans made an appearance on SmackDown. How about that? Los Garza gets the win. Zelina Vega defeated Alba Fire. Jacob Fatu versus Andrade versus Carmelo Hayes. Andrade ends up winning that match. So I think that's when Jacob had his crash out. And so the final segment was featured Cody Rhodes and John Cena meeting face to face. And of course, this is when Cody brought up Jey Uso. And since the final commercial break, of course, this is leading into, as we all know, what's going to happen at Money in the Bank with the tag team match. So that's pretty much what that is. I'm going to get into that in a minute as well. But yeah, I would say those some of the main highlights. And also, before I go any further, I would like to say congratulations to Callie Armstrong for becoming the first women's Evolve champion. So the WWE Evolve introduced a women's championship, and Callie Armstrong made history as the first title holder. So congratulations to her. It's very fitting that the first Evolve women's title holder is also a Black woman as well. So that's double bonus, right? So of course, I'm like this podcast. We congratulate you. We salute you as well. To much amazing success. So also on Monday Night Raw, we see, we see Stephanie Lockyer definitely making an impact, and getting the W and advancing in the women's Money in the Bank, as well as Rhea Ripley. And so I like the backstage segment, that her and Rhea had. Just let you know that there's more on the horizon, and I just look forward to it. And I know the absolute best is yet to come, And so, as a matter of fact, we're going to it right now. Monday Night Raw. So it'll just sound like I'm just talking out the thin air. Quite a bit to talk about when it comes to Raw. Like I said, definitely. All right, here we go. So, on Monday Night Raw match card was the men's Money in the Bank qualifying match: CM Punk versus AJ Styles versus El Grande Americano. Excuse me. For the women's qualifying match, we have Stephanie Von versus Liv Morgan versus Ivy Nile. And we have Jey Uso and Sami Zayn versus Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. Starting off, CM Punk cuts a promo. Wasted a little time discussing his plans for Money in the Bank, including the Monday Night Qualifier, claiming the briefcase, and then challenging either Jey Uso or John Cena. I mean, and not only that, but, of course, like I said, obviously, both Dwayne and Cena caught strays. It's definitely great to see, great to hear. And then we're saying Sami Zayn, interrupted and CM Punk not to worry about Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, Serena Heyman. And he told Punk they needed to focus on the Money in the Bank briefcase. Money in the Bank briefcase, because the victory for the visionary for Seth Rollins would be devastating for Monday Night Raw. And then, of course, Sami Zayn planted the seeds for an eventual showdown between them as champion and challenger. And of course, I know a lot of fans. We definitely look forward to seeing that Punk versus Zayn. And of course, Rollins and company is starting to make their presence felt in Punk's match. More on that later. And of course, CM Punk said it's the summer Punk time. And I was like, all right, cool. Of course, we all know CM Punk Punk likes to raise his game when the summer is around. Obviously, with the pipe bomb, so he's famous for making splashes in the summer splash. So when it comes to the women's Money in the Bank qualifying match, triple threat Stephanie Von versus Ivy Nile versus Liv Morgan. The winner of this match, La Primera herself, of course, Stephanie Von So you see that she almost immediately becomes a fan favorite to win the match on Saturday. But one has to wonder if Craig was willing to put over someone, a huge star like Rhea Ripley or Naomi. And I think that Stephanie's going to be very impressive in this match. I don't see her winning the briefcase, but I know she's going to have a great showing. That's as much as I would say. And throughout the night, we also heard that we want truth chants following the release of our truth. And then of course, Paul Heyman tried to talk AJ Styles out vying for the Money in the Bank, but came up short. Then we have the War Raiders versus the Judgment Day. And the winners of this match, the Judgment Day. And so we saw that Roxanne Perez distracted Ivar allowing JD Bobblehead to hang him up behind the referee's back, and Finn Balor added the coup de grace from there. And of course, the heels earned a much needed victory. Finn and JD with Bobblehead. However, we see that there's an even greater rift when it comes to Judgment Day. When it comes to Liv, Raquel, and Roxanne. Liv and Raquel on the same page right now, but Liv does not approve of Roxanne, and she also talked about somebody that's in the group she doesn't trust, and include that was referring to Finn Balor. You know what I mean? So as far as that. And of course, we definitely saw those words, at least shots fired from the New Day to the Judgment Day. And Xavier Woods says in there, he got abs, but he ain't got no face. All right, that's cool. Shot, like I said, shade thrown. New Day's great with this. And, of course, we saw pre-tapes of video promo of Becky Lynch warning Laura Valkyria ahead of their Money in the Bank. Ahead of the match in Money in the Bank. And, of course, Lyra cuts a promo. Becky comes out. And Lyra just tells her to shut up, just shuts her down. And I was like, wow. And then, of course, afterwards, we see Rhea Ripley welcome Stephanie Bakir to the main roster. It definitely reminds you of when Cena made his debut on SmackDown and Undertaker gave him a handshake. It reminds you of that. Lyra vowed that Becky would never get a chance to poison the Women's Intercontinental Championship. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, this is definitely going to heat up. Can't wait for the match this upcoming Saturday. Then we have, of course, Jay Uso and Sami Zayn versus Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. And, of course, the winners of this match by disqualification, Jay Uso and Sami Zayn. Now, it's still uncertain in terms of what the name of Seth's faction, what the name of Seth's faction is going to be. And I'm very unsure when it comes to the chemistry. Some of the body language shows that, Bronson ain't really the biggest fan of Braun or whatever. As great as Seth Rollins is, it's hard for me to take him seriously as a general, a true leader of men. Someone who can really elevate the bring the best out of those in his group, to bring the best out of those that are under him in the group. Even though he could bring the best out of an opponent in a ring, it remains to be seen if he can keep that same energy as a leader. Whereas Roman, ruled that bloodline with an iron fist, but at the same time, elevated those around him. I talked about that before. The funny thing is, of course, Seth, you could tell that he's become what he hated in Roman, but it's just that, Roman's executed far better. Let's call it what it is. As much as we like to see, as much as we like to see what comes out of this with Seth Rollins, it's still very unclear. It's still very blurry when it comes to what to make out of this group, to the point where they don't even have a name yet. It's just Seth's group. They're considering it being Dangerous Alliance 2.0, whatever. It's just like at the same time, it's like, what is the real end game of this? And as nice as Seth is in the ring, it's hard for me to buy into him and seeing him hold the title as long as Roman. So I would say the end game of this is that this group is not going to have the same impact or popularity as the Bloodline. It's its own thing, but I don't see it, moving the needle at the same numbers that the Bloodline had. Those are just my thoughts on that. What I mean? So as far as when it comes to, NXT, in fact, NXT definitely got doing something as well. And speaking of another thing that sent shockwaves and just got everybody taken by surprise was the debut of a huge free agent that came from AEW. That's definitely going to shake up the women's roster, whether it's NXT or the main roster, and that would be the debut of Mariah May. And there's speculation in terms of what they're going to call her, whether she's going to keep the name, or since this is June, somebody joked and said, call her Mariah June, and there were a whole bunch of other, names they had, pretty funny ones, and so, and with the way that she interrupted that women's segment with Lash Legend, Jada Parker, Jordan Grace, Fallon Henley, and everyone else. It's coming after JC James, NXT women's title. And the lights went off, and then the spotlight just showed Mariah May, much like how they spotlighted Ricky Starks or Ricky Saints now. And more on that in a minute. But yeah, for her to make the splash that she's making, I definitely want to see nothing but the absolute best for her. So it could go either way. It could either be that she takes over that division by storm and just is a needle mover, a game changer that we will all like to see her be. It could be that, or she could just be another notch on Rhea's belt, Charlotte's belt, if you will. Or just kind of like fall into the numbers. It's just another blonde on the roster. I hate to see that for her. You know what I mean? So I definitely would rather see the former rather than the latter. In terms of how she gets booked, time will tell. It's an endless possibility of matchups and everything like that. So it's nothing but the best to infinity and beyond when it comes to Mariah May. So congratulations for joining WWE. But some of the main matches on the card, and matter of fact, not only that, but also I do like the chemistry that Jordan Grace and Lash Legend had, because I saw Jordan's IG post where, of course, we all know that she's in awe of Lash being a giant, to the point where she made fun of herself, right? And of course, Jordan knows that she's much smaller than Lash. She's not going to hide it, right? So there's a video, there's a reel on Jordan's IG page where they're doing, she has this sound effects from SpongeBob when somebody's walking, makes a little splashing noises, whatever. So anyway, Jordan, like the camera, the camera angle makes Jordan makes her look like she's tiny, like 2 or 3 feet tall. And then it shows Lash, the camera angle, looking all the way up at her like she's a giant, to the point where, to the point where it's like Jordan could pretty much fit in Lash's pocket, you know what I mean? So as far as that, I mean, like I like that, kind of like, I like that chemistry. I like, how they joke with each other. I think it's pretty cool. And Lash Legend is an attraction all in and of itself. You know what I mean? When it comes to looks, when it comes to physique, that face card is forever approved. Forever approved. Congratulations to her and Trick for getting the house. Congratulations to them. But yeah, like I said, Lash that's money right there. That's box office right there. So I can't wait for her to go to the main roster. Hopefully they don't play in her face on the main roster when it comes to the championship, because she never won one in NXT. But I would say that at the same time the window's still very much wide open for her to take the title off of JCJ. I'd definitely like to see that. But yeah, like I said, when it comes to that, I think it would be best for WWE to tap into that when it comes to Lash's size or athleticism. Just her attractiveness anyway, right? Because she's definitely cut from that China archetype in terms of being an Amazon, right? And someone who's just one of one, who literally stands head and shoulders above everybody else. So I would say, for them to use that to their advantage, really tap into that, because I know that's what I would do. Have her go toe-to-toe once again with Jade Cargill, with Piper Niven, especially Nia Jax. That's money right there. Rhea Ripley. You name it. She's already going toe-to-toe with Bianca. So it's just like there's so much invested. That so much on the table for the talent, for someone that is as talented as she is. So I definitely want to see them make the most of it. And speaking of Trick, like I said, Trick Williams has a match with Mike Santana for the Team Championship. Charlie Dempsey versus Miles Bourne. Tyra May still makes her debut on NXT. Of course, we see starting off with Ethan Page. And of course, see Laredo Kid, Javon Evans, and Ethan Page appear to promote the North American Championship. But Ray Phoenix wasn't there. See Sean Dolph Shawn Legacy show up because he wanted to face the winner of the North American title of Worlds Collide, which is coming up. So as far as that, then we also have Chase U versus Dark State. The winners of that match, Dark State defeat Chase U. We have Miles Bourne versus Charlie Dempsey. The winner of that match, Miles Bourne. Tyra May Steele versus Ariana Grace. Tyra May Steele wins that one. The Glamour, once again, as I said, Mariah May, like saying, made her NXT debut. And so next up we have Legacy versus Legacy. Legacy Javon Evans, Laredo. Legacy Dragon Lee, Javon Evans and Laredo versus Ethan Page in the Vanity Project. The winners of this match, of course, Dragon Lee, Dragon Lee, Javon Evans, and Legacy. They end up winning. And we also saw Ethan Page take a page out of, pun intended, out of Macho Man's book, where we smashed Ricky Saint's larynx, voice box, with a chair as he hits a cutter or his version of arcade, whatever, on the chair, and just smashes Ricky's throat. It's like, man, you know what I mean? And of course, we also have also the main event, Trick Williams versus Mike Santana. Santana is wants to carry TNA on his back, and Trick is like, nah, my watch. And so we also saw TNA's Casey Navarro and AJ Francis show up and interfere by attacking Santana while the ref was distracted. And this allowed Trick Willie to get the win with the trick shot and retain the TNA championship. So Trick NA reigns supreme once again. Your winner, and still the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, Mr. Whip That Trick Williams, baby. Let me say it like this: Trick Williams is everything. That's, as I said it on Twitter. I said it on X myself. I said it on X as well. So I'm going to say it out loud. Trick Williams is everything that Swerve wishes that he could be. Plain and simple. And so as far as that, and not only that, but of course Trick even had another diss video where he even threw shade at Dolph Ziggler as well. So I thought that was brilliant. Trick threw shade at the team of Shawn Michaels while Trick himself is being trained by the real HBK. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. It's like a double entendre, I guess, if you will. Whatever they say about Kendrick's lyrics, it's pretty much it right there. Just in terms of side by side scenarios or whatever. Easter eggs or whatever. So that's how I felt about that. But again, like I said, as far as that's concerned, and another thing I wanted to talk about, before we get to the predictions, there was a topic. It's laughable at this point. Where somebody said, same talent level, different era, where they compared Jey Uso to Shawn Michaels, saying that even though it's a different era, Jey Uso is, his talent, skill-wise, is on par. He's on the same level or wavelength as Shawn Michaels. Like, really? Whoever says something like that, that's why I said on Facebook, I was like, look, stay away from the drugs, kids. You know what I mean? Like, because whoever, put that up, you had to be trolling either that, or you had to be, on that angel dust or something. Because there ain't no way in the world that Jey Uso is on par with Shawn Michaels. Either you gotta be high, or you gotta be like, so much younger that you're like too far removed from, witnessing Shawn Michaels' greatness. And it's hard to believe we're that far removed from Shawn's actual career. And so Shawn Michaels is the quintessential, in-ring wrestler, performer, athlete, whatever. Like, he's the quintessential, he's the standard, he's the bar that so many people are measured to, including Jey Uso himself. Jay's having this nice run, main eventer, just got there, but look how long he's been a tag team wrestler. He's far more established as a tag team star than he is as a single star. Whereas Shawn has covered far more ground as a singles wrestler than he ever did as a tag team wrestler. So even though Jay, he was been tag champ, IC champion, world champ. He's got those accolades, but at the same time, those don't carry the same weight, at least from a single standpoint. Those don't carry the same weight as Shawn Michaels. Now, of course, Jay's been in the bloodline, the storyline, whatever, but he wasn't the main character. That was wrong. You know what I mean? So even his main event, how much of a main event is he really? Like I said, Shawn Michaels, like I said, he's the measuring stick. I mean, he is the standard that you're measured by when it comes to just purely strictly, specifically what you do in ring. That's why he's been called Mr. WrestleMania for a reason. He is, he's influential himself when it comes to the ladder match, when it comes to Hell in a Cell, when it comes to Elimination Chamber. He is a pioneer in more ways than one of one. So it's absurd to put Jey Uso in the same sentence as Shawn Michaels, right? And the thing is, I know that there's somebody on Perplexed that thought that thought the comparison was there because she thought Shawn Michaels was some three-trick pony. Like, no, not at all. That comparison was just nonsense. So apparently, she must think that she must think that Jey Uso must be a three-trick pony because all he does, just super kicks and splash and an occasional spear. That's about it. Shawn had way more in his toolkit. So I don't think this should even be worth a long-winded discussion. Other than I'm just going to talk about Shawn's greatness. You know what I mean? To compare, all right, let me say it like this: to compare Jey Uso to Shawn Michaels, to try to put him on the same level, is like somebody putting James Harden on the same level as Michael Jordan, which is impossible and it's completely out of reach. That's like putting Karl Anthony Towns in the same sentence as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? That's like putting the Joker in the same sentence as King of Ajwan, whatever you want, or putting Tyreek Hill in the same sense as Jerry Rice. You know what I mean? And like it's my not good. Everybody gets my point. It's not. We're not in the same room, not on the same floor. It's insurmountable. You know what I mean? It's like comparing Chris Paul to Magic Johnson. You got a person with half a brain knows that makes no sense. And it's the same thing when it comes to Jey Uso. As much as I like Jey, I don't want to have to embarrass him by putting his resume side by side with Shawn Michaels or his catalog side by side with Shawn Michaels. It ain't even close. Especially when it comes to them, when it comes to how he's measured as a single star. Specifically how he's measured as a single star. And even just when you look at the full scope overall, it ain't even close. He's not in the same library as Shawn Michaels, let alone being in the same book as him. So it's unanimous. Like I said, anybody who doesn't have that understanding, I think it behooves you to, do your own research about Shawn Michaels' career, other than being, the guy that runs NXT. There's far more to him than being the NXT guy. He became the NXT. He became the guy who runs NXT, and he became the well-respected NXT leader because of what he did in his career. Like I said, his resume, his credentials, all that stuff are the reason why those people, the reason why everybody on the NXT roster looks up to him so much. That's the reason why. You could, like I said, like I said, just do a Google search. You know what I mean? It's, it's on, like I said, it's on Peacock, whatever it is. YouTube, whatever. Just look up any, even WWE themselves. Just look up Shawn Michaels, whatever. Just look up his bio, just look up his resume. You know what I mean? Go back and look at it. His matches with the Undertaker, back-to-back WrestleMania matches, Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker, the Iron Man match with Bret Hart, the ladder match with Razor Ramon. You know what I mean? Like look at the matches with the match with Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21. His match with John Cena at WrestleMania 23, the 1 hour John Cena match. His matches with Chris Jericho, and Triple H, on and on and on, right? His career, his credentials speak for themselves. Last time I checked, Jey Uso does not have that kind of catalog. So let's not go there. Let's not play in Shawn's face when it comes to that. I just drew that, that latest Shawn Michaels picture because of that. So it's an open and closed case, plain and simple. So I think that is about it. I think I've covered just about all bases when it comes to this week's episode. So now, without further ado, I'm not going to make it long-winded. So of course, now it is time for the birthdays. Of course, on May 31st, Brooke Shields turned 60. Daryl McDaniels of DMC from Run DMC turned 61 that same day. June 1st, Mark Curry, aka Mr. Cooper, turned 64. June 2nd, the phenomenal AJ Styles turned 48. June 3rd, Jay Cargill turned 33. Of course, June 4th, Keith David, better known as Goliath from Gargoyles and Spawn, and many others, turned 69. John P. Key turned 63. Elder Bars turned 64. These are all the birthdays on June 4th. Gorilla Monsoon would have turned 88. On June 5th, of course, John Carlos turns 80. Drew McIntyre, of course, on June 6th, Drew McIntyre turns 40. June 7th, Prince will turn 67. Allen Iverson turns 50. Mick Foley turns 60. Superstar Billy Graham will turn 82. And June 8th, Kanye West turns 48. Liv Morgan turns 31. And Keenan Ivory Wayans turns 67. And that is it. When, of course, that's it. That's it when it comes to the birthdays. And so, before I go, I would like to give a word of wisdom. Is that if you sow a thought, you reap a feeling. If you sow a feeling, you reap an action. If you sow an action, you reap a habit. If you sow a habit, you reap a lifestyle. If you sow a lifestyle, you reap a destiny. That's a word of wisdom from Pastor John K. Jenkins. And it's that, it's that one of the key things in order for God to answer your prayers is that you have to change your thought life, to remove simple thoughts, simple behavior. Make sure that you have the right motives and to not ask for anything outside of God's will. Also not to have unbelief, and also to, also to make sure that you accept God's word instead of rejecting it or disregarding it. So that is my word of wisdom. And also remember that you are victorious because greater is He that's in you than he that's in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. It's also on YouTube as well. So thank you very much for watching and listening. And may this day be the very best day of your life.